Late. We are developing a good reputation for starting on time, but today a few minutes late, so I apologize. Welcome to the public meeting of the City School District of Albany Board of Education. If it is your intent to speak in public comment tonight, there is a piece of paper by the door on that table on which you can sign up, and also there are papers there that you might need to follow along with the balance of the meeting. Those of you who would like may stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America. In addition to the Pledge of Allegiance, we always focus our meeting by restating the mission of the City School District of Albany, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. Superintendent Adams, do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight's agenda includes the official certification of the results from our budget vote and the Board of Education elections. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of those who turned out to vote on May 21st. We are all so appreciative of the support that we received for our 2019-2020 budget proposal, as well as our facilities plans. Our communities go ahead to start work on our new middle school in North Albany was especially gratifying. That has many, many years in the making, as you know, and we are looking forward to getting this project started. I also want to congratulate Board President Savage and Board Member Damaris Alexander-Mann on your re-elections. May we give them a round of applause? I am looking forward to continuing to work with you and with the entire board for many years to come. Also, congratulations to Board Member Tabitha Wilson for receiving the Henry Johnson Award for Distinguished Community Service by Mayor Sheehan. You are so deserving of that award, and we are so appreciative of the work that you do on behalf of our students and our community. At the same event, Albany High School senior Irene Nelson received a scholarship from the Albany Housing Coalition, and so we are very proud of Irene Nelson. I would like to extend an enthusiastic congratulations to our Albany High School Unified Basketball team. Our Falcons won the Section 2 championship last Friday with a resounding win over South Glen Falls. I want to thank our coaches, teachers Matt Moore and Judith Ellis, school counselor Christy Coldis, and homeschool coordinator Dion Thomas for their leadership, as well as teachers Nancy Dignam and Stacy Spillman for their roles in supporting the team. Our unified basketball team is in its second season this year, so this is a great achievement. We were runners-up in Section 2 last year, so I know it has been even more gratifying for the student athletes and the coaches to enjoy even more success in 2019. Congratulations once again. We had a very successful groundbreaking ceremony at Albany High School on Saturday as we kicked off phase 2 of our rebuilding project. We also welcomed more than 30 parents, students, community members, and staff members for phase 1 tours earlier that morning. It was a wonderful way to celebrate another milestone in this transformative project for our school district and our community. 2020 will be an especially busy year for this project. We will open our magnificent new academic building in January. We will break ground on phase 3 in the spring, and we will cut the ribbon on our new art and music building to start the 2021 school year. We are looking forward to celebrating all of that progress next year in partnership with our community. The Empire State Supervisors and Administrators Association recognized its 2019 Administrators of the Year in Copperstown last Friday night. The award recipients included our own Arbor Hill Elementary School Principal, Rosalind Gaines Harrell. This is such a well-deserved honor for Ms. Harrell. Her commitment to the school and the entire Arbor Hill community is exemplary, and I want to say congratulations again on this honor. In addition, Principal Harrell will be recognized at the 2019 Black and White Scholarship Ball for her work in this area of education. The event will be held on June 22nd and is sponsored by the Kappa Charities of the Greater Capital Region Incorporated and Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So we are so very proud of her. As the New York State Legislature winds down in the 2019 season, I would like to provide a brief update on a new law that we anticipate the governor will sign to help improve safety for children riding school buses. Legislation approving stop arm cameras for school buses passed both the Senate and the Assembly earlier this spring. With the governor's anticipated signature, it will allow cameras to be used to identify vehicles illegally passing school buses when the red lights are flashing and the stop arm is deployed. There will be no cost to school districts or our taxpayers to add this new equipment. Along with the significant safety improvements for children, there also is the potential for the enforcement of the state law to generate additional revenue that could benefit schools more broadly. Director of Transportation Denise Town had a preliminary meeting Wednesday with the Albany County Sheriff's Department and other partners, including First Student. We will be working to schedule a follow-up meeting as soon as possible so that we can be in position to add this new equipment as soon as possible. I will keep you posted. This information is hot off the press, so we wanted to make sure that you had it right away. As the end of the school year approaches, we have a number of important reminders for our students and families. The last day of class at Albany High School will be Monday, June 17th. Regents testing will begin the following day and continue through June 26th. Please note that Albany High's graduation exercises will be held Sunday, June 23rd at the Times Union Center. The ceremony will begin at 2 p.m. The last day of classes for our middle schools is Tuesday, June 25th, and 3 of our middle schools will be holding their 8th grade moving up ceremonies on Wednesday, June 26th. Albany International Center and Tony Clement Center for Education will also hold their 8th grade moving up ceremonies that day. Our elementary schools will end the year with early dismissal on June 25th and 26th. Please visit our website for the early dismissal times for each school, as well as the dates for elementary promotion ceremonies. And just a reminder that we will take a couple of weeks off after that and then move right into summer school. The majority of our summer school programs will begin July 8th, and you may find more information on our website, albanyschools.org. To borrow from the French national anthem, the day of glory has arrived for our Albany Marching Falcons. Earlier today, our marching band had the honor of performing in the ceremonies marking the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion of Europe during World War II. The band marched along Omaha Beach, which we have come to know as well as a place where our soldiers and our allies sacrificed such a heavy price to turn the tide of the war against Hitler's Germany. The videos and photos that our band director, Brian Cady, and our families have shared from us from today's occasion are truly moving. I would like to share a brief video of our students' performance in Normandy earlier today. At this time, I would like to invite Pine Hills Elementary School Principal Ms. Tia Cornell to come forward and tell us more about the great things that are happening here at her school.
And while
I
Ms.
see that she's joined with some guests.
While Ms. Cornell gets established, I just wanted to mention that we are joined by Board Member Ellen Krejci. I believe this is a first in this history of the City School District of Albany. We have a board member joining by video conference. Ellen has had some medical situation that resulted in her not being able to be with us tonight, possibly having to do with roller skating. And we welcome her by video tonight. Thank you, Ellen, for making the point of being here.
Well, and thank you to everybody who made this, thank you to everyone who made this possible while I recover from surgery, so thanks.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to Pine Hills. Thank you for being here. And we're going to start off with two very important parts of our community, and they are going to introduce themselves.
Good evening. Tonight, two students from our Student Lighthouse team will speak to you. Alyssa, the Vice President, and myself, Emmett, the President. Pine Hills Elementary is a leader in May School. That means that beginning in our youngest grades, we learn to become leaders. There are 8 habits that we learn and try to live every day in school as well as in our community. The first 3 habits are private victories. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. Once we master these habits, we're ready to move into the habits that lead to public victories. Think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and synergize. Habit 7 is sharpen the saw. You need to figure out what your talent is and share it with others. Mastering these habits will help us make better decisions in our lives and help us be the leaders we are meant to be.
As a Student Lighthouse team of Pine Hills Elementary School, we filmed and posted an anti-bullying skit. We had a lot of fun. We showed how bullying is wrong. When we finished, we gladly posted it and showed we know why bullying is wrong. We would like to thank the Board of Education for their time tonight.
They're the stars of the show, so we'll try and keep up with them. Up here, you'll see our demographics. Our enrollment's currently right around 414 students, pre-K to 5. But we do have 21 classrooms and 2 self-contained classrooms. We offer PE, art, library, music, band, and orchestra. A highlight of our demographic is 10% of students are students with disabilities, and we have 12 ENL students, students classified as ENL, excuse me. And Pine Hills is a very diverse place. 42% of our student body is Black, 21 Hispanic, 20% white, 7% Asian, and 10% multiracial. So in terms of our SEP highlights and the plan that we've been working for throughout the year, they've really fallen into 3 different categories, which include differentiation. We want parent engaged, and not just in activities, but also around the content and being able to help students in both ELA and math. And then the way that we use data to really drive the decisions that we're making. For Tenet 2, which is around leadership, the leadership team is really focused to embed triangulation meetings with all staff in both ELA and math that helps us make curricular decisions and meet our lofty goal of 5% increase in conditional growth and skill proficiency on the NWEA. And we've also offered professional development around how to differentiate in the RTI blocks specifically, which has been a focus since my arrival here in October. As far as teacher practice, we're looking for that emphasis on data to translate into meaningful instruction that's responsive to the data. So we've had vertical alignment meetings with our ELA and math coaches, and also coaches modeling instruction and supporting teachers in that regard. One point of pride is the amount of fidelity that our teachers K through 5 have with data teaming every single week. And we've seen through our benchmark assessments that the data is moving, both in ELA and math, through that data teaming. Each team is making significant progress towards their goals that are coming from data teaming. And it looks like we're on track based on the winter assessment to make that 5% growth in NWEA, which I'm excited for our team about, and we know that there's way more work to do. One of my primary focuses has been on getting walkthroughs done, and on average, each grade level has had about 14 for the year. And hopefully it was intended to be a meaningful venture, and it was a great way to sort of come into the Pine Hills community. Tenet 5 focuses on offering support to our Tier 2, Tier 3 students who need the most support, and we want to really see those decreases in send-outs and referrals. Our social worker, Ms. Umar, and actually one of our security staff, Mr. Murdoch, offer a weekly boys and girls group to mentor some of those students, and they meet with them during lunch, and the students never want to miss that because I think it's a time for them to really talk and learn some strategies. So that's been something that we've done. We have monthly Good Choices, and then Lighthouse Booster, because Leader in Me is something that is really intended to build student confidence and efficacy so that hopefully you see discipline data go down because they're learning the habits of leaders. And last but not least, our community and families are a pivotal part of our community. We've had so many initiatives this year around literacy and math, our STEAM night, books, literacy weeks, book sales. But one thing we embedded in our quarterly newsletters was a note from our ELA and math coach that really tells parents, how can you help us further the curriculum at home, and what are some tools and resources that we can give you to do that? There's so much that we can celebrate about Pine Hills. If you give me a whole bunch of time, I could tell you a lot about it. But there are two specific things I'd really like to highlight, and these turn to my next really important members of our team. Ms. Scott and Mr. Gallo are both members of our Lighthouse leadership team and do an incredible amount of work here.
So we have hosted our third annual Leadership Day on May 30th. It's a student-led event where the community gets to see how our students use their leadership skills daily within our school. On this day, students welcome guests, serve refreshments, take guests on tour to classrooms, perform student leadership presentations, and conclude with a student panel that answers questions guests have about leadership. Some guests stated in their feedback of the day that they loved how much the students had pride in their own school, their student ownership around the building, as well as the students tracking their goals and their learning in their leadership notebooks.
All right, another one of our celebrations that we wanted to talk about was on Wednesday, May 22nd, we had our Lighthouse Review. On this day, we had members of the Leader in Me Covey organization come to our school and review the progress that we're making and how we're embodying the 8 habits, which our goal is to become a Lighthouse school to receive Lighthouse status. Hopefully within the next week, we should know what our results are from that. But some of the highlights from the committee revolved around how we train new staff in the Leader in Me process, our family communication, the emotional and physical environment of our school building, as well as our school-wide goals and leadership notebooks for all grade levels. They gave us some goals to keep working on. Next year, we're going to have more training around the 7 habits, the 8 habits for families. We're going to increase our student voice for all of our grades on our Student Lighthouse team, and then we're going to increase our student-led learning throughout the building.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for being here, especially to our 2 special guests. Thank you guys, you did a great job. I wanted to just share that, first of all, I always love being here because I personally helped build the playground outside many years ago, so it's always kind of fun for me to be here and see that playground that I hammered the plastic nails into. But also that the rave reviews about the Lighthouse event that you did last week have been extraordinary. Members of the community who do not have children in our schools have been reaching out to me repeatedly to say what a remarkable experience that was, and how impressed they were by their experience here. So thank you very much for doing that and for inviting the exterior community as well as the internal one.
And that concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is the time in our meeting that we set aside to hear from district residents, parents, students, and other members of the public in what we call public comment. We welcome your community input about the decisions we are making. In addition to accepting your comments during this public comment period, we also accept them by email, phone, and postal mail. While you are making your remarks, please keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific district staff cannot be shared publicly. Every student and every staff member deserve to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. Also, please keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to alert the district to a concern you have initially. Please share your concerns first with relevant staff like the teacher or principal. If you feel that concern is not addressed adequately, you may appeal that to the person supervisor up the chain of command, if necessary, to the superintendent, and decisions made by the superintendent may be appealed to the board. Finally, please note that the board generally does not respond during the public comment period. If you need a response, please consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When you're recognized by me, please state your name and your city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will be given both a 1-minute and 10-second notice by Ms. Lang, and I will notify you if your time has expired. The first name on this list is a familiar one to this group, Dr. Rose Brandon, former board president.
I don't think I need any introduction because it's going to eat into my 3 minutes, so let's get moving here. But I'm here with all good stuff tonight, all good news, everything. I'm bubbling all over, and I'm sure you can see it. On behalf of Wilburn Temple Church, I want to thank any and all of you who have participated in our scholarship fund drive. It was a tremendous success. I want to thank Superintendent Adams, who came to our luncheon and was the keynote speaker, and my goodness, she was just fantastic. You know she's a public speaker creme de la creme, and she did a fantastic job at that luncheon. I just left Albany High School's awards night, where one of our first scholarships was presented to a student. That's part of the reason why I'm going, We presented 5. One of our 5 was presented tonight. I just left the awards night, and it was just fantastic. And I also want to chime in with the superintendent. Every time I watch the news and they mention or I see that marching band, I'm about to jump through the TV. I am just so happy to see those kids marching on the beaches of Normandy. It was just fantastic. And it almost brought me to tears. And I think that's it. That was quick. The last thing is all happy stuff tonight. Aren't you glad? And I'm glad to see, I noticed when I went out on board docs that you're addressing a music action plan. Way past due. I don't know who's working it, but they need to work it. And, the problem, I'm sure, is the disproportionality. And I know you folk are going to work on it and get it straightened out so that it's more amenable and more workable to children of every race, color, and creed, basically. Thank you so much for this time. And I didn't even see the card grow up, so I don't think I took all my time. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Brandon. It's always a pleasure to have you back visiting with us. The next name on the list is Lisa Barbarino.
Thank you for, am I on? Good evening. I'm Lisa Barbarino. I know many of you received my letter. Stand up. Louder. Okay. I'm really here just to introduce one of my, the parents of one of my students. And there were a couple other parents who might come, maybe not. And I'm just going to turn it over to Ms. Fama.
Okay. Hi, guys. Bear with me, I'm not really a public speaker. My name is Fama. My daughter goes to New Scotland Elementary. She's in first grade. I basically came today just to acknowledge Miss Barberina as the ENO. Oh, sorry. Just to acknowledge her because as a parent, I think you want to know everything that's going on in your child's class, you know, meet their teacher. And I wasn't given that opportunity during parent-teacher conference, even though I picked a date for that. Aside for that date, the teacher for that classroom never acknowledged me. And at the time, I felt like basically my child didn't matter. So after, you know, she introduced me to herself as my daughter's ENL teacher, and, you know, she's doing well in class, we're advancing more in her vocabulary and stuff like that. I spoke to her and I explained to her the situation. I was like, I don't know who my child's teacher is. I didn't meet her. I don't know how she's doing in the classroom. And she's like, oh, don't worry, we'll make sure that you meet her. So she set a time and a date to meet with the teacher, and that's how I found out who she is, how she's doing, somewhat of how she's doing, not fully satisfied with it, but I just want to acknowledge her because, you know, she tries so hard. You know, she doesn't have to, but, you know, she just make me feel much better, basically, yeah. Just wanted to let you guys know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that the woman who just spoke, you also signed in, so both of you signed in. Is that correct? Terrific. Okay, thank you so much. So that concludes public comment tonight and brings us to the part of our meeting we call routine consent. During this part of the meeting, we approve routine matters for the district. That usually includes items like contracts, field trips, hiring of personnel, and other similar matters. We vote on these as a group with no discussion, and that allows us to use our board meeting time more efficiently. Each BOE member, each Board of Education member has the option to set aside any routine consent item in order to require discussion and a separate specific vote on that item. So I will now entertain a motion to adopt the routine consent agenda. Ms. Wilson, second by Ms. Smith. Are there any set-asides? I'm sorry, I know it looks like a clean sweep, but I want to just set aside the Raptor contract. Any other set-asides? So all in favor of adopting the routine consent agenda less the Raptor contract? Ellen, is your hand up? All right, I believe that is unanimous. May I have a motion to adopt the Raptor contract? Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Alexander Mann. Is there any discussion? That would be me. I just wanted to see if I could get some clarity around how that's going to change the lived experience of people in the schools. It's a security contract, and I'm just trying to understand whether that's going to change the way we do things on a day-to-day basis.
Mr. Baker, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Baker, please.
He can't just shout because we have this recorded on audio tape so people who are not here tonight can listen to it after the fact. So we need to find a microphone that works.
The contract is submitted really as a culmination of a team effort. So I'm also going to defer to Ms. McKenna at times and also potentially the superintendent. But in general, in reviewing from a larger committee standpoint to overall security strategy of the district, a subgroup was formed to look at 3 particular applications, one being a visitor management system, an emergency management system, and then potentially a response system. Obviously, an implementation of an application is not only the software itself, but the corresponding processes and procedures that accompany that. Much of that conversation was actually driven by the Pupil Personnel Services Division around potential changes to the overall process or workflow that this system could also now afford us. So the takeaway from those original conversations was that subgroup put forth recommendations in regard to first standardizing expectations for all events across the district, whether it be sporting events, general entry, all kinds of procedures. And the understanding in all those conversations was that obviously there were considerations about our public presentation, how welcoming we were to visitors, the potential that these applications would bring to enhance or potentially detract from the human interaction that was part of these systems. But ultimately, the Raptor system itself doesn't fundamentally change the way with which users or visitors enter our buildings. Everything is still driven primarily by a person-to-person interaction. What this system affords us is the opportunity to facilitate storing a person's identity for ease of entry in the future, for one. It can also do some very simple things like cross-reference a sex offender registry, potentially could tie into custody alerts, things that we have in other systems that can inform our staff at the front upon approach, whether or not there are things to be concerned with at that point in time. And I think that primarily conversations around how process would change were going to be driven mostly by who would be charged with the different responsibilities for managing the software. Obviously, the attention would be to those front-end folks who still have to interface with the person and then involve the system at appropriate points. So the implementation is a long way from being crystallized at this point. You know, this is step one. We're acquiring the application for July. A bulk of the background work will take place from July through August, which is kind of a typical implementation fashion. And a big part of that is training. There is a whole suite of training, starting with the typical kind of turnkey approach that will deal with parts of our district membership who will then feather out to larger groups. There's a application-specific training. There's also process training that's involved. And I don't want to leave anything out from some of the other work that's centered really on the human potential part. So I'll defer to Ms. McKenna if I have misrepresented or omitted something about that work.
I would go ahead and add that one of the operational changes that would happen is where visitors may be accustomed to doing a hand sign-in, it would then become electronic. So that would be, when you talk about what's a day-to-day practice that would change, that would be the day-to-day practice that would change. And it would give us a more accurate accounting of who's in our buildings. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at to improve the safety and security of our students so that we know who's in our buildings.
So essentially, when I come in as a visitor, instead of writing my name on a list, I'm going to give my name to the person at the desk, and they will enter it and print the sticker.
Correct, yeah. The tangible changes, you'll have a printed badge with your picture on it.
Does it take a picture?
Yes.
So it would be more like I'm coming in, I type my name in, and it prints it out, and then I have it right there, and it will take a picture, so I'd have a picture ID, if you will.
I understand. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or further discussion about that topic? All in favor of the Raptor contract? That is unanimous.
And I have one item.
Mrs. Adams?
So tonight we would like to announce a new appointee. So if you will please stand. Ms. Elaine Gressler is here, and she is now our new Director of Special Education Services. So thank you so very much and congratulations.
So the next item on our agenda is an action, which is the formal certification of the tally from the May 21st election. You will see that in front of you on the screen, or it is available on board docs. You can see the final counts here, including the 175 write-in candidates for school board and 252 for library board. I didn't notice that before. Interesting. So may I have a vote to adopt this as the certified canvas? Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Lang. All in favor? That is unanimous. And that brings us to a discussion topic. Thanks to the strong recommendation of Dr. Brandon, we do all of our actions at the beginning of our meeting and move on to discussion after that. So unless something unusual happens, we would not anticipate taking another action tonight. The action portion of the agenda is completed, and we will move on to the discussion part of the agenda. So, Mrs. Adams.
So at this time, I'd like for Ms. Bechtel and Karen Wright to please come forward. We have had a lot of work with our Music Diversity Task Force, and we would like to provide an update to the work that's been going on this year. So at this time, Ms. Bechtel.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Board of Education. Kate and I are happy to be here and give you an update on year one of our music action plan. So just to give a little bit of background, we took a good hard look at data a couple of years ago and saw a lot of disproportionality. And so as a result of that, we convened a task force in 2017, 2018, and really looked very closely at our practices and protocols, and just had a lot of very good, deep conversation about how the music program is built, what it looks like, and really we tried to keep it very positive. We tried to say, hey, here's this data, and now let's talk about how we can change things in order to make it more proportional to our student body. So we developed two goals at that time. One was to strengthen the program, and the other was to increase diversity. And we had a lot of the music department engaged in the activity with us. We had guidance counselors, parents. It was a hard thing to do, hard discussions to have, but I think in the end we came out with some really good action steps that could help us achieve our goals. So we developed the action plan in that year, ready for implementation in 2018, 2019. And part of that too is having Mrs. Kate Wright as our fine arts supervisor, to have someone really provide that oversight and dedication to the arts to make our goals come true. So I'm going to turn this over to Kate, and she's going to walk you through a few of the things in the action plan.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Adams and cabinet. With the action plan, it's been ongoing work. I think that the whole team's been invested in the work. One of the highlights so far has been overall improved lesson scheduling. I want to state particularly at the high school level, and I thank the Board of Education and the Cabinet and Superintendent Adams for making some budgetary changes for this school year that has directly impacted our students there. I think that's part of that work. Another thing is the make-up lesson progress. I've been told by our high school teachers that they volunteer their time after school to help provide make-up lessons to students. We'd like to further develop the opportunities for more time and more support by possibly getting some outside community members. Been speaking to St. Rose. We have our new rebuilt Triumph Honor Society kids that might help out in that capacity. So there is some opportunities to continue that work beyond just our high school teachers, because they're just so supportive and driven and busy all the time. Another aspect of our music program without additional lessons and practice is our Chime program. They currently also support Schenectady School District, so we are in addition to their work. They're grant funded. And the third thing as a highlight is seeking to establish partnership with St. Rose College for after-school support. I've been in talks with the professor, Jay Stoltz there. He teaches the method students, and we're really devising a plan about how to give credit to the college students by bringing lessons as a requirement for their program. So that's something that we are in the works of trying to achieve. So more on that later. And I'll move on. Another highlight about our program development so far has been the restructure of the Music in Our Lives course to just become more engaging to students. Some of the curricular changes has been to provide more musical experiences. We had 15 new keyboards purchased this year at the high school for that course, and they've been well utilized by students. There's implementation of African drumming through rhythm, and then there's a music technology component too. So
I'll speak to that.
Okay.
So you could go back to the new courses. I just wanted for the board to understand that Music in Our Lives can be the, students have to have an art or music requirement, 1 credit requirement at the high school level. So sometimes students will choose an art course, sometimes they'll choose a music course, and if they have no background, then they do choose Music in Our Lives. And we felt that that course had a really wonderful opportunity to expose kids to actual musical instruments, playing and participating in that way, which was what prompted our redesign of that class.
And another highlight is basically reworking the curriculum for our music technology course by launching Digital Audio Workstation 1, which hope to be 2 and beyond. And that's really a curriculum written to be more aligned with a student who wants to go into the industry, the music industry, production industry, go into college for that work. It's really college and career ready. And then the World Drumming is basically taking that aspect of the hand drum and making large drumming ensembles. So that's going to be really exciting coming next year. And beginning keyboarding, we're calling it Piano 1. So far, these courses have been very, very popular. So we'll be looking forward to keep checking in on progress as the school year begins and students are starting to take the classes.
Make sure they know they're not in there yet. That's for next year.
Yes, this is for next year. And another highlight is there's been in progress for a couple years is a music department handbook. Before I came on board as the fine arts supervisor, there was a need for new teachers and just the department to be aligned to policies, procedures, just some go-to information about the program that we serve. And so with that idea, I've taken that as a part of this work because there are some protocols that have been kind of missing, things to do for transitions and retentions, adding and dropping, recruiting will be less organic for our teachers are already doing a lot of the work to keep their students in programs, but this would be something that's a little bit more procedural. And so this is a list of things that are going into that manual, and it's a work in progress. Yeah, you wanna go ahead?
So this is just one of the data charts that we submitted in the update last week, and this is the overall demographic data for grades 3 through 12, band, chorus, orchestra, and I did include music technology in there. We were excited to see the overall enrollment increases this year. Whether or not we're getting to that, growing our diversity is another issue, but we did indeed increase enrollment in those instrumental classes, but it's even, it's sort of even across. The gains that we had for black students was slightly more than the gains that we had for white students. So we want to try to keep that moving. And then finally, as we talk about disproportionality in our year 1 outcomes, over 3,000 students are in a performance music course when you count the music technology. Well, I wonder if there's any school system that has a third of their kids engaged in music like that. And this does not include, of course, the general music classes. This is this instrumental program or the technology. and choral. And I think that's something to really be proud of. We are proud of our music program here. It's pretty incredible. Our elementary schools, we increased enrollment for all subgroups in band, orchestra, and choral. That is something to celebrate as well. We had significant enrollment increases in orchestra for Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students. And we had significant enrollment increases in band for Hispanic students. One thing I do want to say to the board as we try to increase diversity in our music program is that that will happen over time. And if we see these increases at the elementary level, we're more likely to see that grow as we move to middle and high. At middle school, of note is the increase of Black students in both band and wind ensemble and Hispanic students in wind ensemble. And at the high school, while the data shows this continuing disproportionality, we are only in year one, and it really does take time to shift the trend. But we are proud of the fact we have increased the number of Black students in vocal music. So we have had some, I think, some very decent success in year one of our action plan. And that concludes our presentation about the Music Action Plan update, which is focused on lessons, program, and our handbook.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We always appreciate hearing about the Music Diversity Task Force, as it was a very strong board initiative over the last several years, so it's wonderful to see some of it coming to fruition. Board colleagues, as always, please organize your minds, figure out what your most important question is so that you can ask it first, because I suspect we will have more than one round and someone else may ask your second most important question before it gets to you. Ms. Smith.
First of all, I want to thank you both. This was indeed music to our ears. Having been all through my own elementary, middle, and high school musical programming, this is terrific. I think really looks good. I'm excited. I have a couple questions. Let me ask the first one. And to what do you attribute the increase demographically? I wanted to know specifically, were there some strategies that were implemented, or, I mean, is this happenstance? What would you attribute this to? And then that will help me also understand, like, how we sustain that, you know? Right.
Well, I believe that the department as a whole had been exposed to this plan, has had copies of the action plan, and I think that there's a perception change, I think. The second thing I would say is that we did have an infusion of an increase in budget, and we purchased a lot of instruments for this coming year, and there is something to be said about having instruments. They'll have them, they'll find a student to play them. So I think that's a piece of it too.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify. You said instruments purchased for this coming year.
This year, we just, last year.
This current year. Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure I understood. Okay.
Madam President, members of the board, Member Smith, one of the other things in this work with the overall task force is brought about a heightened awareness. And so when you talk about what is the strategy, number one, it's looking at intent and purpose. And when we strategically look at students who have talent, and then we broaden that perspective to maybe the students that we didn't ordinarily look at that may have talent that we don't know, it's that intentional, purposeful outreach. The materials help tremendously, because then we don't have to turn students away because we don't have enough instruments. We have enough instruments so that when students are looking to take the music classes, that we can now facilitate. They may be interested in one instrument, but now there may be multiple instruments that they may be able to try. So I would add to that just a, number one, the intent and purpose of understanding what it is that we need to do to build a better music program.
Can I just ask one quick follow-up on the actual question about how many students are represented by the music technology class, which is new? Is that it?
1-2 classes? Yeah, it's 25 kids probably
Because
tops.
these numbers are extraordinary. The increase between last year and this year is many hundreds of students, and it's a very, very large number. It's surprising that there's like one specific thing that's different. Ms. Krejci, did you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to thank you Can you hear me? Can someone like raise your hand if you can't hear me for whatever reason? Thank you so much for the excellent report. I just had a quick question about one of the items. It was, let's see, on the first page, increased staffing at elementary underserved schools. The goal has been to collect data in 2018, 2019 to determine if students in these buildings do not have the same access to instrumental music as their peers in other buildings. And it says it's not being implemented at this time. I understand that the staffing is not being increased at this time, but I'm wondering if we do have data on how many students are participating in instrumental music in each building.
It was a little bit hard to hear you, Ellen, but I think that you're asking about increasing staffing at elementary underserved schools and wondering, you see that it wasn't implemented now, but wondering what our next steps are for this action item based on data?
No, just asking, have we gathered I assume that it's not too difficult to gather the data on how many students are in the music program at each elementary school?
Ellen, it's distorted, so if you type it to me, I will read it aloud for you. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right,
Yes.
and meanwhile, while she types, let's go on to somebody else who wants to be next. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. It was an excellent presentation and it's excellent news about the increase in our students participating, especially since hearing last time about those new initiatives, those new courses that you were introducing. I feel like I'm cheating because I've seen them a little bit earlier. We were at the curriculum coordinating committee meeting. So another question I had was about the two goals, which was the increased diversity, which you've illustrated, and also the strengthening of the program. I just wanted to circle back and understand, were you meaning strengthening in terms of what I saw you laid out, which was formalizing certain processes, or did you mean introducing it to younger students would allow us to sustain them over the years? I just wanted to clarify that.
I think the strengthening definitely has to do with sort of establishing clear protocols for the department and really articulate those, have a written articulation of those protocols to really help with the transitions. We've always heard that it's in the transition sometimes that we lose kids, so that's a space that we really wanted to pay attention to. And then also, under Kate's leadership, grow the program. I mean, the drumming and the piano and the tech we have in place, but the drumming and piano is for next year. And the initial numbers are good. We're going to really be able to run a few sections of each of those classes. Is it two drumming and 2 piano? 4 piano? So we have really done some, and these are first-time music players at the high school, which was something else that we talked about. How do older kids get access to playing an instrument? And so this is a way to do that. So I think it's about our processes and protocols. It's about growing program. That particular goal is around those items.
Who'd like to be next? Ms. Lang.
I would like to know what are your special education numbers. Have you done for the music programs, or is that something that you're keeping track of?
I do not have those, but we could get those for you and send them back.
I am now voicing for Ellen Krejci. This is not my question, this is Ellen's question. How many students are in the instrument? Can we get access to how many students are in the instrumental program broken down by each elementary school so that we can see how many students are participating at each school?
Yes.
Okay, that would be great to see that in the SBU. And Jen wants to tag on to that?
And I'd like to add, if there's waiting lists, because if the numbers have gone on with the increased instrument purchase, perhaps that really did help with those kids that were on waiting lists and how that has happened. I know some schools, timing, room, space, but it looks like instruments might have been one of those reasons we had those waiting lists, so I'd like to add that as well.
We'll get back to you on those 3 requests for data.
Dr. Tutor.
It's great to hear that the numbers are going up. The last slide, which talks about the troubadours and the albinets, why was there so much of a decrease? I mean, we went down from like 30-some students down to like 20-some students. I mean, because when you look at the previous years, middle schools or high school, things were going up.
Do you mean, if you mean from the prior level?
Yeah.
I would say because at the high school, we have 3 levels of choral. So there is, they come into the regular vocal music, then they go to select, and then this is audition-based. For this particular group, and they have to have room in their schedule. They have to be, these are generally many of these kids I think could be interested in going to college for music and that kind of thing. So
they're excellent performers. I mean,
yes.
They perform in all our functions.
Yes.
So it's really encouraging to see the increase in the elementary level. And I know we've had this discussion about having jazz bands at the other middle schools, because I think all of those things will bring all these kids eventually to that one high school that we have. It'll make a great music program.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Alexander-Mann, did you have a question?
My colleague, Ms. Smith, stole my thunder. What she had said, I just wanted to get a sense of what has contributed to the increases, and you answered that, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I have a couple questions. My most important one is how the work of the task force is continuing to ensure that this maintains a community and district-wide initiative rather than becoming sort of a top-down initiative. Do we have a continued involvement of the existing task force, or is there a new task force, or how are we continuing this work so that it continues to infuse the enthusiasm of all of our teachers?
We did not have a plan to reconvene the task force, but it is certainly something that we could do. I think that we would like to this was year 1. I think that we'd almost like to get into year 2 to really see that if these numbers are replicating and slowly improving, and we will have the new courses by then in place, and we'll be able to talk to kids about that impact on them, and then maybe that would be the time to sort of bring folks back. But if things are working and we're getting what we need, what we really want to do is we want to take the music plan actions and embed them in the handbook so that they are just a part of our system of how we do music.
I completely hear what you're saying, and this is an operational question, and so I'm really just curious about what your intent is, but I would say in general, in my experience, buy-in comes from participating in the development of the whole process, and so it's always good to have that constant conversation, because no matter how we get at good we get at this as a result of our first-year action plan, this is a problem all over the country, right? This is not a unique, narrow problem to Albany that we're going to be able to fix. We're always going to be able to improve on this. There's no end to this work. It's always going to be in progress, so I would just ask you to consider that as you think about how to move forward.
It's a good idea.
Let's see, I think everybody's had one, so Ms. Smith.
Okay, thank you again. I think this is maybe leads into the methods area, and I really don't mean to be in the weeds on this, but I know what was missing from my own experience and also from my daughter's who's gone through program. And, mind you, I think we did well. I think there's a great program here. But I wanted to ask you about how much work in terms of the methods, I guess, will be spent on the ear, developing the inner ear. I have a sense sometimes that children don't learn to hear the note, don't learn to hear the music. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think maybe I should just tell you why I'm asking this. Okay. So while I was, on Monday, I had to go down to New York City, and I was actually going to one of my schools that I've been following for a while, that's right now a K2, and they utilize a program called El Sistema. I had to walk, it's a co-located school, meaning it's in a public school, but separate, from that general public school. I had to walk up 4 huge flights, and there was a kid coming down, and he was like, "What's wrong with her?" And I was sweating, I was at a ball. But as I got to the top, I could hear this music, both vocally and also in terms of string. And I thought, oh my gosh, I know this is an elementary school. Who's doing this performance? And I walked towards the classroom, and these were first graders who'd only been playing for 9 months. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And so I had more conversations with the school about, what was happening here. Why is this so different? And I wanted to just say, again, I'm not suggesting that there's any systems better than the other. I think they're, pedagogically, you've got all the elements there. There were a couple of things in this system that I think were meaningful, and they have some core values: equity, empowerment, excellence, impact, sustainability, joy, and community. And I could say more about what those things mean, but I think you kind of get that. And I know we have some of this in our framework, it's built in. But this is the intentionality that I think you're describing, and I got to kind of see it in this model. A couple of things about it is that the youngsters at kindergarten, and they're just like our students here, no introduction really to music, other than what they've learned at home, songs that families sing perhaps. They have 2 music sessions a day, every day. And the first half hour, and I know that's a difference, is all vocal, so they're training that ear. The second is instrumentation, and this time they started with, with strings. They also, practice is certainly encouraged, but they've taken away the stress, because we know our kids have a lot of stress at home, and we want them to enjoy their music and not feel the stress. That's what was told to me. Some of those kids optionally take their instruments home one day, maybe not the next, maybe 2 days in a row, whatever. But I'm telling you, when I heard this out of this group of first graders, it just blew my mind. They also were asked, every student is asked every semester, what are the most commonly played songs in your home? And this brings in that sort of culturally, connection. And so, there was one example where there were 2 youngsters who had just come in from Israel, did not speak English. They shared the songs. These songs were eventually modified for their strings, but also each of the students learned those songs. And I could also see where it impacted their literacy skills. It impacted both ELA and math literacy. So again, I'm not saying this is perfect, and there are lots of reasons why when you have these little small programs, it works. But El Sistema began as in Venezuela, and it began as after school, and we do have programs throughout this country where these youngsters are enjoying music, community is involved, parents are involved. So I got very excited reading the action plan, because I could start to see more of a system taking shape. And then I also was sort of thinking in my mind, how does equity come into play? How is community connected into this? Not just through partnerships, but, so I just wanted to share that with you. And again, I know it's not my lane to be down in the weeds, so I do apologize, but sometimes being able to see a model gives you some avenue to speak to what you're then going to see here. So thank you.
Thank you. We will certainly look the system up and maybe have more conversation.
Anyone else who's got another question? Ms. Lang and then Dr. Chittor.
I was curious about NYSSMA and how the process is of having students play in NYSSMA, participate in NYSSMA, know about NYSSMA, expectations of NYSSMA, if that is within protocols or if that's individual schools or buildings or teachers.
I just had a question referring to our in-house NYSSMA or NYSSMA in general.
Are you talking about minor NYSSMA, individual solos, or major NYSSMA where the whole ensemble goes out to play?
So our high school ensembles sign up for their major ensembles annually. and they travel out to whatever the host school district is. This year, Myers Band actually traveled to one of the majors, which was pretty fantastic. But our in-house solo festival that's held at Myers every year is basically our own NISBA festival, because we're a large enough school district to have that, and we want to individualize the attention our students receive. It's kind of a community event for the teachers. They come to support their students. I provide a district letter that goes home to families inviting them to participate. Several of our PTAs sponsor students, but it is fee-based. This year it was $16 per adjudication. So there's also piano, and there's opportunity for duets as well. So once they're signed up, the chairperson of the festival, which was our Hackett band teacher this year, Mr. Redmond, took that list together that the teachers signed up on an online platform and created a schedule and conducive to parent requests for scheduling. So that's pretty much the process. And then we last year started by a teacher idea of having a NISMA celebration. So the students that participated were welcomed back to come to ASH and do kind of like a recital of celebrating that experience. Not everybody could be part of that recital, or but it was kind of randomly selected so that different schools could be represented. So that's how we ran NISMA this year, and we plan to continue that the following year. The teachers recruit the students. They have the district form, so there is an alignment there. But they are in charge of collecting the forms back with the funds, and they go to my office.
Dr. Chatur.
So it's more a comment than a question, but I guess it's a question too. We talk about lack of instruments being the barrier for some of the students getting into music, right? And which is why we've increased funds, we have more staff, we have more instruments that we buy. But music doesn't really need instruments. Music is music, right? And if you look around the world, there are countries that, do I eat or do I have an instrument? There are kids who are doing great music without instrument. So are we doing things in our elementary schools, especially even before we come to third grade and pick up an instrument, where we are doing things like playing music with, body parts, or that may not be interesting, but or things with household items, some things that the kids can go home and do, sort of like a kid's version of Stomp, if you may,
So part of general music curriculum is to have instrumentation experiences with students to learn rhythm and other types of areas. There are some schools that have donated buckets for bucket drumming. In particular, our teacher who is at Giffen and Montessori actually presented a professional development on bucket drumming to our music CASDA, and has shared that with other teachers, including Sheridan Prep. And there's lots of interest. I think Toast has bucket drumming, xylophones. The ORF practices, the district practice. There's egg shakers and boom whackers and lots of other activities. Does every school have the exact same materials and equipment? No. But since I've been in my position, I've asked for wish lists from teachers to try to hear their needs. And as budget, allows me to, I want to satisfy the needs of the teachers in their schools so that that equity piece can come into play.
But even simple things like those glasses filled with different levels of water, it's like a xylophone, sort of imitates that. Things that the kids can take home and do at their house, and these are things that they can find.
Ms. Wilson.
Just to expand on Dr. Chatur's point, I think that's also the application in other areas of study. So naturally, when he was saying the water, I thought of how that relates to STEM, and also I saw that you were firming up the ability for students to get lessons and thinking creatively about that, because I know that was one of the issues. And I wanted to we're in a school that talks about character development all the time, and deliberate practice is one of the things that are getting injected through that lesson, and they can take with them into other areas also.
So my second question has to do again with the extraordinary increase between last year and this year in the number of students. It's really extraordinary. I mean, you only gave us a number in a graph, so I couldn't quickly see exactly how many students, but the increase between last year and this year has to be several hundred students on a base of less than 3,000. So it was a significant increase. And I don't remember there being a significant increase in the number of music teachers that we were asked for even mid-year. So I'm wondering how that is working out, how we have delivered satisfactory instruction to a significantly increased number of students without increasing the number of teachers. Does that mean we had excess capacity just sort of hanging around in the music department, or how does this actually work?
No, it has more to do with the fact that at the elementary level, if you have one student or two students who are playing violin, then that's your lesson, is with those two students that are perhaps beginners. But if you have, what we would really like to see is for that teacher have 6 or 7 students to play violin. So you could have bigger lesson groups, and I think that is likely to be the area where we were able to do that, especially at elementary, because what ends up happening at when they're there 2 days a week perhaps, and so they have to get students in for their lesson in that period of time. And so the lesson groups could be smaller. And so if we are increasing the number of students playing violin, we could, if there are normally 2 or 3 because that's all there were, and now we're having 6 in there, that could explain the difference. I mean, I would have to
I'm just curious to know if there is, or if you guys have started thinking about the research around what the best practice is for group lessons at the elementary level. I really don't know much about that, about what the right number of students is I mean, it's obviously not 25, right? I mean, we would never have a class scale lesson, so I don't know if the number is 2 or 3 or 6.
So according to some feedback from teachers, is as the students progress in their lessons, that they can have larger numbers of larger students in lesson groups. In a beginner's level, teachers would much prefer to have less students, and as they acquire more skills, they can have more commonality in larger groups.
But there is the music, the National Music Group. I can't. What is it? It's NAFME. Yeah, NAFME. Sorry, it escaped me for a minute. Recommended are that 6 to 8 number for lessons. Maybe a little bit more for the higher up ones. You might want to start a little bit smaller, but 6 to 8 is sort of like the industry standard.
Interesting, because I think our elementary lessons are only about a half an hour. So if you're doing elementary, how do you hold the violin? To have 6 to 8 students in a half an hour, you're not actually hands-on with that child for more than a couple of minutes. So I'm interested to hear more about the research on what best practices are for elementary students, because as Ms. Smith was very excitedly explaining her experience with Il Sistema, which looks to me like a very exciting program, part of the heart of the difference there is that we're only doing a half an hour lesson and then a half an hour, 45 minutes or something, ensemble work with our elementary kids, and that's a big difference. As the lessons get bigger, for our littlest guys who are just learning where do I put my finger, which key does it go on? It's hard for me to imagine a group of 8 6-year-olds being able to learn anything, and they're not 6, they're 8, but 8-year-olds learning anything in a half an hour. So I'm curious, again, this is something I know the program is evolving, I know you're getting better at it. I just think that we should be cognizant of the fact that we've seen, it looks to me like at least a 10%, maybe 15% increase in the number of students involved in our programs, and we haven't increased our number of teachers. So if we had that level of increase in our overall student body, we would be hiring 10 to 15% more teachers. And so I do find that surprising. Ms. Smith.
I'm sorry. So the other thing I wanted to just make mention of with El Sistema is it is ensemble based. And the classes that I saw were generally around 20 with the various sections, cellos, bass, etc. And again, they do have those 2 class periods a day, but if you're talking also about after school, that
Didn't
could
you
almost
say they had
be.
several assistants in the classroom too, that there
So
were multiple adults?
They
there wasn't
always
one
have
adult?
2 teachers in the classroom, and then they have these partners. They have musicians in residence. So there was a gentleman on the bass who was performing right with the students. There was another one on the cello, And periodically, you'll find a couple of parents who've decided that this was so interesting to them that they're coming in and learning. But it is, I'm impressed, and again, want to see how this happens at various grade levels. But that ensemble, it creates in part that part of the element there of community, where they're learning together and also teaching one another. So I'll let you take a look at it. I'm just on a high, and I do really mean that what you've put together today is greatly appreciated, and I'm very excited about where this is going for our students. Thank you.
Anybody else have another question? Ms. Lang?
I just want to say that, looking forward to all this. I have a second grader going into, deciding music. So just to see, kind of how that's happened and how her class has changed perhaps, and having 3 already gone through, the process. I'm looking forward to even more outreach and more families and more. And I did want to say too that one of the things that I always didn't quite not understand is the recorders. My kids got them, they didn't. I never saw them practice, but they didn't bring them home. So I was kind of wondering, what is the theory behind recorders, and how are those implemented? Who pays for them? Sometimes I've paid for them, sometimes they got them free. Just wondering the recorder program.
Well, as far as the recorder, the recorders are written into the curriculum for the elementary level. So if your child didn't get it one year, they would definitely have gotten it the next year. And as far as whether they take them home or not take them home, as far as I understand, they stay in school unless the school might have purchased them for each student of a grade level. Therefore, that would be their recorder. And when I know that's happened, it's been a building budget purchase.
Anyone else have another question? I guess the last question I have is about after-school music opportunities. I've noticed at the middle school level, Myers is very blessed right now that they have a fairly youthful music instructors who are able and willing to volunteer their time after school to run after-school music programs which are even more than what we provide for the district, which is tremendous. But it also means it's not something we're able to offer at every school because it's on a volunteer basis. So I'm wondering how much difference it would make in our ability to provide music after school for additional music ensemble work if we had a system in our contract where we paid teachers after school. Do you think that would be, if there were paid music instruction like we do at the high school for music clubs or other kinds of clubs, would that make a significant difference in our ability to deliver service?
Yes, it probably would.
That was my last question. Does anybody else have any questions for Karen and Kate? Thank you guys very much. Very exciting to see the direction we're moving in, and we look forward to speaking to you again at some point for another update. So that brings us to item H on our agenda, which is a discussion of technology.
So at this time, Mr. Baker is coming forward, and he will share with us information about the school tool implementation and then what we are looking at in terms of our web presence and the transition to that. So, Mr. Baker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Adams and members of the board, for the opportunity to update you on a few initiatives within my division. And I am playing in a doubleheader this evening. I'm going to be solo for the first game, and I will call up Mr. Lesko to accompany me for the second part. So we split this up to look at school tool first and separately. And I just want to start not at the very beginning, because it was a little less than a year ago that I sat before you as we were on the precipice of implementation. At that point, we had met all the major milestones and were considering it a go situation. And we did, in fact, fully implement before the year started. So I'm picking up right now with what I'm considering those benchmarks that I had in place at that time. So these are the highest priority items that I felt like we had to hit at certain intervals to be fully implemented. That meant we were fully functional and fully reliant on the new system and no longer going back to the prior system for any purposes whatsoever. And I am very pleased to say that we have met all of those initial benchmarks. And interestingly enough, to me at least, the elementary report card was one of the most challenging of lifts in the beginning. And it was just because it was such a shift in, first of all, the approach to standards-based implementation, and then the way that document flows. The behind-the-scenes things made it a really challenging report to complete, but we were able to do that. And then right behind that, for added measure, was the pre-K report card, which was the most challenging that I've encountered so far. Other than that, I am happy to say that we not only replicated what we had in place in terms of other reports, but we're also ahead of the game, which is what I obviously hoped for in terms of implementation. And now the Tier 2 tasks approached, and those were the things that were most important to lead, I guess, to have successful adoption by the larger user base. And that is because you're trying to either replicate, recreate comfort, convenience, and processes so that folks would not look at a change as a deficit in a new system. And in terms of these Tier 2 tasks, I was not surprised at all by the fact that custom reports were the most highly requested, and that's where we spent a great deal of time in replicating things that people would print off on a daily basis to then do other work. The training pieces were and have been and continue to be the most challenging, and that's for a number of reasons. It's also not unexpected in any way. And I'm very pleased to say that in terms of like implementation and integration, we are way ahead of where we were with our previous system. So the Tier 2 tasks that I presented here are all in good order at this time. Obviously, some are still in the works, particularly things that are centered on training and developing our user capacity, and some of the higher end, real high end integrations with like our dashboard environment, which I will be hopefully presenting to you in the near future. So I'd like to take a look at some data elements that will somewhat support the overall adoption that I've presented to you. And I'm going to take a outside-in look to start, and that means we're looking at things through the eyes of the external user, the more public user, that being students and parents via the portal. And when you first look at these parent account statistics, you may be shockingly alarmed at the low rate of active accounts in the parent realm. But I do want to point out that this, believe it or not, is very similar to where we were with PowerSchool. When we brought over the existing accounts that were in PowerSchool, we had 1,300 accounts. And you have to remember or be informed that in PowerSchool, it was a one-to-one relationship in terms of the parent and the student. So 1,300 accounts did not mean 1,300 parent users. It could be one user to 3 or 4 individual students. And so when we're looking at this 463 right now of active accounts, and just to further inform you, I'm viewing active accounts as those that have had a login at least once a month, considering that to be activity, not simply those that were created and remain dormant for the most part since October. So we, believe it or not, are really in line with where we were, and most of the users who were informed right away when it was available came right over and have been faithful users. One thing that I don't have an explanation for, but is kind of pervasive through some of these stats, is the lower rates at the program schools that we have, Tony Clement and also AIC. I can tell you that we did, in fact, work with Principal Steed, as we do in all other cases, to make sure that we had multilingual materials for distribution. I will tell you that I showed up at anyone who invited, or for anyone who invited me to a parent university, to a PTA, to present about the portal. We mailed out 5,400 and some odd direct letters in the beginning when we launched the parent portal to those in a parental relationship. So we certainly have tried to be welcoming in terms of getting folks to the portal and to bring accounts. And that's something we're going to continue to work more with at the building levels and with Mr. Lesko's office to continue to try to build that user base around the portal. The grade 6, elementary grade 6 accounts are really hard to bring any meaning to at this point because it's so new. The elementary schools prior didn't really have a parent portal user base, but since we've shifted to grade 6 alignment such that the grading practices and the coursework are consistent whether you're in elementary school or middle school, we also rolled over the account base for those 6th grade parents and 6th grade students. So it's a very kind of a new user group potentially. So next, the active student statistics paint a rosier picture. You can see that the overall adoption rate based on activity is about 79%. A large majority of our students are actively using the portal on a daily basis. I will also point out that it's very likely when we look at the parent numbers that we have a lot of piggybacking going on. And that's to be expected, meaning a lot of parents simply use their student account login credentials. You'll see again that trend with the program schools being somewhat low, AIC and Tony Clement. What's really, I think, encouraging is that high adoption rate right now of the grade 6 students. They seem to be very eager and are very fervent users of the portal at this time, with Giffen as the outlier at the moment. And we will continue to, again, bolster our efforts in getting people involved, particularly our students and parents. And I'm just disaggregating some of that student info for some finer grain, and you can't see it well here visually, but there's almost a pyramid effect in here in that you see the use kind of slowly amp up from grade 6, 7, 8. It peaks at 8 and 9 and then slowly starts to fade out again as we get to the end with grades 11, 12. I don't have a working theory. I think maybe the seniors know where they are at that point in time and all is well or not with them. But I think that there is absolute buy-in in those middle grades, and I think that students are, on the whole, very much involved in tracking their progress via that portal. And again, you'll see those grade 6 numbers are very consistent. And now just looking at the frequency of activity, not just the number of active accounts. So on average, and I'm going to kind of look at September as a discard or an outlier simply because there wasn't much of a month in September. We only had student accounts open for a very short period of time. So from October on, you'll notice again, students not only have the greatest number of accounts, but they also are more frequent users overall. There isn't much of a discernible pattern here other than when I broke it down very basically, it's almost an every other day kind of a login scenario. You're looking at almost an average of 15 logins per month, so figure every other day kind of a situation. I will also tell you that there isn't much more I could do in terms of drilling down at this point. We can't track page views. I can't tell you what modules are frequented most often at this point. That kind of detail is not in the native tables. Those are things that in a tier 3 or a tier 4, we can get into really looking into those areas, and that will obviously help us to improve adoption overall, but I cannot provide any greater level of detail right now about the overall access. I would risk all the money in superintendent's pocket, though, that it's probably in the grade area. Looking at teacher usage, frequency is not a good metric simply because there are compulsory activities. Every teacher has to be in school on a daily basis for some statutory requirements. One being taking attendance daily if you're an elementary teacher, or on a period by period basis for secondary teachers. And our teachers have to enter formal grades in for purposes of generating interim and report cards. So they have to be in there every day. So what I did take a look at is the number of assignments that exist in course sections. So what you'll see is basically that big blue bar is the overall number of course sections, and I've done this by level, so secondary and then elementary. Secondary includes middle and high school. And 95% of the existing course sections in the district have graded assignments in their grade book. In the elementary realm, we have 88%, which is higher, honestly, than I thought it might be, simply because of still the elementary, somewhat elementary approach to instruction and management of the day and those kinds of things. And overall, we have a 91%, even including elementary, 91% of our teachers are using the gradebook. And just to drill a little further down, by teacher, the average teacher for all levels has about 59 graded assignments right now in the gradebook. The high school at 72, and 72 is an important number simply because that equates to almost a 2 per week. If you look at our 40-week year really being 36 weeks or so of instruction, then if you had 2 assignments, graded assignments a week, that'd be about 72. So our high school is right at a 2 assignment a week kind of a turnaround. Obviously, these are averages. We have some high flyers. You have some who are a little less frequent in their use. And on the right-hand side, I have a breakdown by department. Those avid folks are avid gradebook users. And in general, I'm happy to say that every department is represented. So every single discipline is finding value in that gradebook. And this is not just for the report cards. This is, like I said, for daily assignments. And these are, by the way, published grades, meaning they go through to the student and parent portal. So a lot of those metrics were, again, from the external face of the system. And certainly, when you look at the 900 or so teachers, the potential 5,000 parents and others, and all the students who look at the system the way they do to check out grades and understand progress, it's a very important component. But I also am looking at our implementation right now from the lens of overall measures of success. And every system we looked at had the statutory goal of having a grade book, having a parent portal. So those things are obviously important and were part of our system. But they weren't the impetus for getting a new system. Really, that was driven by the overall scope, scale, and complexity of the information that we have to capture, report, use, make sense of on a daily basis. And so there's no way I can familiarize you deeply with all of the elements that go on within School Tool. For the average user, for the majority of users, I should say, School Tool is like a glacier. They see a tiny bit above the surface. Most of it lies way beneath the average, the casual fan. And so it's all those other things that really led us to look for another option. And I'll just touch upon some details in some of these areas. The multiple data points, aside from the 1,200 discrete fields that we collect and report out of New York State requirements, we have a whole host of reasons to look at things internally as a district. So we now have the opportunity to standardize that collection, look at attributes and flags and other things that are relevant to instruction and to our kids. So we're able to do that now in a much more unified way. Special programs. Even though we have very formalized instructional models and things that are part of traditional schoolwork, we have all kinds of programs that we have a great need to monitor, track, and learn from, such as after-school programs, our pre-K. Ms. Hasty's won all kinds of awards for the depth of that program, and we have to support that at that depth. We provide, like I said before, report cards for pre-K. I don't know of any other district that does that. We take attendance. We formally schedule our pre-K students. And all those things have to happen in a system that really isn't built for that. New York State doesn't even collect that information. So we had to find a way to make that work, and we have. Same thing with the after-school programs. I think I might be the only one in the room right now who cares about the New York State extracts, but they are critically important. And they're the things that I've said once before will sometimes wake me up in the middle of the night. Because if something is wrong, we have serious implications. It is so nice to be able to get an extract that's shaped properly now. And I'm not running Power School down, but almost every extract we had to work through manually. And some of our extracts are 100,000+ rows of information. And most of them are updated on a weekly basis. And it just was absolutely burdensome, I guess is the way to leave it. Interoperability, we're exchanging information now with more systems in a much more unified way. It's all these ancillary curricular systems, some of our health, our IEP student, special ed student information system, they all need information. We had to write all kinds of weird routines. With School Tool, we're able to automate those exchanges in a much more unified way and do it once. We have incredible scheduling efficiency, which is a very important thing, and Ms. McKenna may be able to support me here. If you talk to someone at the high school, they will as well. We have never been this far ahead in terms of scheduling. In fact, we were due to lock the high school schedule today, which means that it's pretty much ready to go and turn over to counselors to deal with all the kind of one-offs and conflicts. This is work we're typically doing in the midst of July, sometimes approaching August. We are way ahead, and it's because School Tool has a much more robust scheduling engine and allows for multi-user input. PowerSchool required us to let one person do the work, and then it was time to look at a model, everyone kind of out of the pool, no one could touch anything. Sometimes it had to run overnight. You'd look the next day and see how we can run full models. We can load and unload the entirety of this high school population inside of 5 or 6 minutes and get a look at how it shook out. Extensibility, all these things I mentioned related to special programs. We now have a standardized way to capture that information. We can make the system, we can mold it to fit the needs that we have. Student enrollment sounds pretty pedestrian, but it's not when you consider how New York State requires us to report with a particular code, a student's enrollment in a particular building that's officially registered with a BEDS code. We, in fact, as you know, runs programs as schools, and that creates a lot of challenges. We're able now to officially represent our students with their true enrollment while also fully schedule and enroll them in a program school and manage that as its own entity. Incredibly challenging work before, now it's manageable. And automation, the number of things we can allow that system to do without any human intervention. When it was grading time, we'd have to run all kinds of rules inside of PowerSchool. We'd have to store the grades. We'd have to take some things out, rework the parameters. That was true for report card grades, for honor roll, for GPA, for ranking. And again, those are things that I don't want to be the one fat fingering something and then rank is wrong. School Tool has automated calculations that run on a nightly basis, and they're accurate. So overall, for me, this measure of success is this greater accuracy, the integrity of our information. We're able to put things in one place and have it cascade through the environment. It's truly relational. PowerSchool, without exaggeration, we had 5 places to hold someone's name, and we had 5 iterations of that name. They were open text fields. When we rolled over, we had quintuplet versions of folks because an apostrophe wasn't there, there was a capital, there wasn't. Addresses, we had 7 input fields for addresses. It's single input, greater data integrity and relation. So all those things said, of course we have our challenges. Training is a challenge simply now because we're past the larger wave of trainings and even some of the more foundational trainings. Now we're getting into the weeds of folks who do very specific things. We have more than 1,200 daily users. I'm going to tell you that there are 900 people doing 900 different things on a daily basis, and we have to meet them at their level of need for their process, and it's not even consistent across buildings. So maintaining the ship, sailing it, and also working the capacity angle has its challenges, and we are putting things in place to help mitigate that. The shifting ownership of process is a challenge in that now we can decentralize a lot of processes, and some offices and folks weren't ready for that handoff. It was always seen as a tech or a data role, and it's truly not. Program offices really should own and understand their data and manage it, and so we're able to do that now. But there is, like I said, a challenge in terms of preparing that user, and not just for the skill, but for the process and their role in the broader spectrum. Empowering power users may seem like awkward phrasing, but what I'm saying here is that we have some very capable users who do certain things, and we'd love to figure out how to harness and leverage their expertise, but we can't do that to the detriment of what they actually do, meaning it's hard to pull people out during the workday to go help someone else or set up trainings. And we've had mixed results, success with after school and before school kinds of opportunities. As you all know, we have a challenge in terms of our PD days already, a lot of competition. So trying to figure out how to really leverage those power users is vexing, but I think we'll ultimately be able to work that. And we're also having some challenges with expediting feature requests, meaning we can do a great deal of customization, but there are some parts of the base code that we can't affect a change in, and some of those changes would be very valuable not only to our district, but I think one of the other 350 districts in New York State that is a customer of School Tool. But I'm happy to say we actually have the vice president, the training manager, a product owner, and 2 other trainers coming to stay with us for 2 days on June 13th and 14th or somewhere in that range, because we've been persistent enough to get their attention. So there's movement on that front. And lastly here, even though we've got the challenges, we certainly do have a roadmap in place as well. Many of these things are probably self-explanatory. We're going to continue to do advanced integrations with our other systems, not only our dashboards, but other systems. We can begin to really look at how to roll in some automated notifications. There are a lot of workflow pieces inside a School Tool, but again, it's preparing the users and the processes and the program offices. Simple things like right now, and Dr. Wilson Turner can speak to this, when a new student enrolls, getting that communication to the building in a timely fashion has been a challenge for the district. We can automate that so that a particular person or persons at a building get notice immediately when a new student's enrolled in that building. We haven't implemented those things yet, but they're on the horizon immediately. We can start to shift to real paperless delivery mechanisms, report cards and interims to start. We can begin to capture contact updates and other information from parents. We can look at DALI in the online pre-registration. All these things have built-in workflow, so you'd sit in a queue and have to be authorized, but certainly we can afford users access to provide us information digitally. And lastly, there are a couple of modules we haven't even begun to use yet within the system. One being the health module. We could, in theory, start to look at migrating away from our third-party standalone health management system, bring that management inside of School Tool and have it unified. And we were hopeful to do discipline this year. We're not going to be able to lift that, so we're going to stick with another year of our Vader system. But I can almost assure you that next year at this time we'll be looking to roll the discipline into the discipline backbone of School Tool as well. So that was a lot in a short amount of time, but I certainly am here for discussion.
Board colleagues, if you have any questions, let's try and organize them one at a time. Thank you very much for the extensive report. It's always great to hear from you, and to get a little, talking to you is like the iceberg where we get the tip of it. We understand that, and we appreciate getting a little deeper knowledge. Ms. Lang, did you have a question?
You talk about trying to recruit more parents into the numbers, and some of the things that I think would be helpful for me as a parent, because I did sign up for Tool School, but it was a little frustrating because first I got the letter with the ID, and then I logged on, and then I didn't have the kids'
Student ID?
School ID or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And so then I had to try to figure out where that was. So if I hadn't been really dedicated to try to sign on, I don't know that I would have, because I had to go to 2 different places to get the information. So I'm sure there's maybe a legality why you can't put it all together, but that extra step really caused me a 2 or 3 week delay in getting the parts together. When I sat down, I thought I had my paper, I got on the computer, and boom, I needed this other number. So that was a little bit frustrating. But I did it. And my second is, if there was a way to have computers or a computer lab set up at open houses for parents to be able to log on, where someone had a computer to log on all their information, and just sign up for School Tool, or there was, a real presentation at the open houses, or at transition camp. We now have transition at all the buildings, parent-teacher conferences, a little bit more in-depth S&N. But I just think that even at the open houses, if you with your screen and a couple computers, stuff like that, I think that that's really helpful, because if parents see what they're missing, they might log on, because if they don't know what they don't know, they don't know what they're missing perhaps. So those were kind of my ideas.
And I thank you for that feedback. I'm sorry that it was such a challenge, but it's great to hear from the actual parent side of it. I knew there was a bit of disconnect in that initial mailing, and you're absolutely right. We didn't want to include all of these PII pieces in one piece. So,
Thank you. Dr. Chatur, well, one question, if I might. I see that the students are using this system more than their parents, and I don't know whether, I think what I used to do was wait until my daughter came home, and I would get in that way, because I could never remember all those things. So I don't want to make the assumption that parents are not somehow connected to it, but maybe that's in part a survey question,
I actually think you may not have been here. I did offer that as rationale for some of the low numbers. Piggybacking, I refer to it as.
My apologies.
No,
I
not at
didn't
all.
recall.
Yep.
Dr. Chatur?
You talked about, the first phase of training is done. Now it's getting targeted training, and you have power users, but it takes away from the day schedule to be able to do it after school hasn't quite worked. Have you thought about doing videos?
Yes.
And having an FAQ section? So because again, with any software, it's like even Microsoft, right? You still learn to something. You Google, you go to the FAQ. So that puts the onus a little bit on.
And so great feedback as well. And we do have a repository of resources, including videos. And I do produce videos for all the major skills that folks should have in different areas, including teachers, clerical staff, so on. We have documents as well. We do take a multimodal approach. Right now they're in shared folders. And I will tell you that in the second half of this doubleheader, we talk more about the web platform. I'm kind of in between stages and looking for the permanent host for that more comprehensive and one-stop shopping help center. But we absolutely, and we also build in, by the way, training materials into the product itself. When people log in, we can require them, we can present them with opportunities to click here or there and get materials or go somewhere else. Or we can even require them to at least acknowledge something before they move on. So great feedback. We've attempted most of these things at some level, but not with great fidelity or purpose, but that is part of where we're at now.
Great. Thank you. I had a related comment too. I mean, you on one of your last slides, you talk about the targeted notifications. So would that be something like, let's say a grade has been posted, you get this notification?
That actually is, so not only is there the parent portal that's web-based, there's a mobile application. The mobile application does allow parents to sign up for notifications, such as posting of grades. So that is already built into the mobile part of the product.
Ms. Wilson?
I deliberately waited because I knew other people would ask my questions, so thank you both. And as usual, you had a dynamic presentation. I was going to mention about the videos, and Jen talked about the enrollment. I was curious about, when you were talking about it sort of being anticlimactic and people sort of attrition towards the end of school, like senior years and things like that, did you consider that, or is there a way to incorporate almost like a progress tracker where people could see where they are in certain things, and sort of like, because I think that's part of it. It's like naturally, like you said, people are segueing out of school, so maybe that's part of the engagement, is seeing where you are in the process, and parents seeing it also.
So that's a yes, and it's a yes, but that, I'm going to quite honestly tell you, is probably a tier 3 kind of a issue, because the prerequisites or dependencies for that are very deep and extensive and requires a lot of input on behalf of typically counselors. We have to build basically this whole graduation requirements module out, which is extraordinarily detailed.
Yeah.
Right down to mapping courses to things. So that is work that is valuable and will be done. It wasn't part of initial rollout, it wasn't even a tier 2 task. Like I said, it's honestly a tier 3. And then to your point, yes, we'd probably be able to offer a more comprehensive or snapshotted view that does in fact track progress. That's what it's built for. But I'm not at a place where I can devote resources to that work, and I can't do it in isolation either. So we're slowly getting to those kinds of tasks, I guess.
Very good, thank you.
My question is only regarding the usage data. Does School Tool, or is there any other source for information to know how we're doing compared to other districts or like districts in terms of our usage numbers?
I can anecdotally speak to being in another district in a former life with School Tool. We're, based on those raw numbers, we're probably 20% of what they were. The only way to know, there's no open system sharing. The only way for me to know would be to reach out to other districts, which I am happy to do.
I'm just curious. So you're saying in your former district they had 5 times as much usage as we have now? Is that what you said? 20%?
Roughly, 50%.
So we have a ways
Yes.
to go.
Yes.
Okay, that was my trying to understand that. And also I wanted to share with you just a moment of enthusiasm around when you get to push the button and get the data out. Having been in
Thank you.
processes where you have to go to sleep and wake up the next day and realize that you'd accidentally miscoded something and now it's still wrong and now you have to go to sleep again and wake up the next morning, it is a horrible, horrible experience, and I am with you in the joy of the data coming out right
Thank you.
rapidly. Anyone else have a question or comment? Jen?
So I want to go back to the contract that you just spoke about.
This is the Raptor contract?
The Raptor
Yeah,
contract, sorry. And my computer just automatically shut down, so there was a part in there that I took a picture. Thank you.
Mr. Bill Gates decided to restart Jen's
Sorry, yeah.
computer mid-board meeting, so
I was going to blame it on the
It
technology
says,
department.
it says on one of the lists, it says ID scanner for state-issued identification cards, and then it says, $10,000. Are we now scanning all state-issued ID for visitors or parents?
So-
Because that seems like something that is new, and we do have parents who will not do that.
So that is function in the system, and it's one of those things I alluded to earlier, that we are far from having a crystallized implementation plan, particularly around that very thing. So as I sit here right now, and I'm only speaking from as part of the team, and this is another one of those initiatives, Raptor, where it really is owned by many of us because of the fact that it supports security. In fact, even in cabinet, I'm kind of waiting for superintendent maybe to jump in on my behalf, but we talked specifically about how and when to venture into the identification piece. As of now, that is not part of the initial implementation plan.
Okay.
And just to say that it can be down the line, but as we look to phase things in, we have to look at priorities and what our most immediate needs are.
So do we need to purchase those things now? Is that part of the deal? We have
It
to
is.
purchase the scanner. We can't just say, don't bother sending us the scanner. We'll get that some other time.
We'd be best suited to have all the components simply because of the configuration challenges that may develop if we're not prepared foundationally for that. Also logistically, determining, if that's something you're going to roll out, you're going to want to know where these devices will be and what kind of network access do they have and power access. So there are a lot of logistical considerations that go into that as well.
Okay. I would just say, looking for nods and smiles, that in general, board philosophy around welcoming and being sensitive to our undocumented families would have us very hesitant about making that kind of a change. So I hear what you're saying. It's $10,000 we're spending for an ID scanner for every single school. It looks like 22 of them. So if you're saying we should buy them now, even though we might never roll that out, I trust your judgment on that. I understand sometimes it makes sense to purchase things at the beginning rather than
Yeah,
go
the
on
a la
and add
carte
them.
charge is not friendly either.
Yeah, I understand how that goes. So I'm just making sure that I'm speaking for the board. Everybody is sort of some eye contact. If you have other opinions, I think we should share them because it is something that we need to think through about what that would mean.
Just returning to the concept of the ID aspect, it would be just the ideal situation is if I'm visiting, I would have an ID. But I'm imagining there's a workaround if you're such a person that's undocumented, you would just like give your name still, and we would still allow you to be in. So it's not like I understand the concern because it's like an unthought of byproduct is what about people without IDs, but I think, so I'm understanding that we could probably work and be sensitive to that still.
I'm quoting Ellen, who has just texted in to say that she is concerned that we'd be motivated to use the ID scanners because they're on site and we own them, and she finds that disturbing. Ms. Smith, did you want to add something? You look thoughtful. Do you need anyone else? Yes?
So again, I think everything is about how it's messaged out to parents, and perhaps it's just that I'm in schools all the time, and I make sure I sign in. I make sure I get most of my schools have these scan systems, and I think it's important. One, I want them to know that I'm in there, and that I should be counted. And it's a record also for parents. They, if something happens, they know who's been in that building too. But so I guess I just, figure that it's about how we message things out. And I think there's a way to protect parents who are likely, feel most vulnerable about having themselves identified. And it sounds like, according to your response to Ms. Wilson, that we're able to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's about
Yes,
how we
scanning the
communicate
ID
that out.
is not a requisite part of the system functioning. And just, I don't want it to be lost, your point to be lost. We're also, part of this is capturing for all-around safety purposes so that we know who's in any building when an emergency occurs. That's the emergency management component of this system.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any discomfort about that. I'm not seeing any discomfort about signing in or having a digital copy of who signed in. I think it's just this question of the scanning of physical identification, which I totally understand and respect, and I don't think we're in a position of making a board decision on that right now, but I think it's important that we talk about it. Any other questions or comments about School Tool? Dr. Chatour.
With the IDs,
You're still on Raptor?
Yes, still
Okay.
on Raptor, sorry. I just want to say, let's say everybody had an ID and you're scanning it and everybody was fine with it. Do you still open yourself to the risk of now you got to store all these information, or is it just transient? Would it not be just have a picture and a name or
Well,
whatever?
it does retain, once the initial scan has occurred, it does retain information, which actually allows for very quick processing the next time you visit.
But you also open it
No,
to the risk
understood.
of, just like your credit
Understood.
cards, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions about either Raptor or School Tool before we let Mr. Baker go on to talk about the website? On to the website.
Thank you.
At this time, we welcome Mr. Lesko to the table.
I know this is deja vu all over again. We have spoken on a number of occasions regarding this project, and I'm here to say tonight we are completing this project. We're at a stage now where we have, as you hopefully recall, engaged a partner to help us with this work, and that partner brings expertise on a number of fronts and also brings a much needed sense of urgency. I'm not sure quite how to phrase that, but someone who truly is a project manager on top of every detail, holding us accountable, which is something we seemed to struggle with internally, to hold ourselves accountable at times, and also we frankly just ran out of bandwidth. However, just to acclimate you with where we have been and kind of where we are now, this has been a long developing project with several goals, and I've represented those 4 basic goals here on the first slide, and it's really the desire to have unified branding for the district, and that's not just through iconography and images, but overall look and feel as it relates to the City School District of Albany. We're looking to weave in a whole host of features into a web platform that allow for synchronous and asynchronous communication, a two-way experience in many cases, and just things that we come to expect with most web experiences, like the ability to search through and find things, to have a calendar that's organized, things of that nature. We also had, and I'll speak for Mr. Lesko and his team on this front, the desire to have a structured content manager. Our website right now, for some of you, the under the hood stuff is a straight up old school HTML website, meaning you go in and hack everything in, and then you copy it if you need to 5 other places. And so a structured content management system provides obviously structure, but it also allows you to efficiently reuse, repurpose content in a unified way, much like what SchoolTool has done for our data integrity. And then finally, not least, is the accessibility component. We want to afford every user of that website a rich experience, rich, meaningful, and valuable experience. So at this point, this is a full design build project, and it has been all along the way. And so in terms of the design phase right now, we are approximately, and I'm speaking again mostly for Mr. Lesko and his team at the moment, being still related to the project, but not so much the overseer of this work. But we're about 80% when it comes to gathering the input. I did take part in the initial outreach to the community, including focus group activity, face-to-face focus group, more of that to come. We've also put out now a few iterations of a survey to gather wide community input as it relates to the website. In terms of getting the design together, we're more than halfway home there. The most recent survey actually that's out right now has asked users to look at some wireframes and give us feedback on the look. I think there are 3 choices, if I'm not mistaken. And we're also inching along in terms of identifying those pieces that make up the brand. So the color schemes, the graphics, and the basic navigational elements in their layout in regard to the pages that the user will interact with. And for the build piece, these are parallel projects. They're happening simultaneously, but on different fronts. I'm involved in much more of the work on this side, or at least through an informational method. So the build is really the things that all the foundational pieces that will come together and be what the user sees when they visit our website. So it's those elements like the actual pages, the structure and the hierarchy to not only the district site, but the building sites. It'll be the titles and the metadata and all those navigational components. It's also taking the files that we have associated with our site right now, linking, reattaching the documents and other resources that users have access to. And also the actual migration of content that exists now on our pages to the new system, and it's not a one-for-one, so there's a lot of nuance involved in that work, and that's really where our vendor brings a great deal of expertise and value to the process. And then there'll be some quality assurance on the front side of things. And in parallel, as I mentioned, there's this kind of pre-launch configuration work. It's the under the hood things that most people won't be exposed to, but help us to facilitate that user experience nonetheless, and also to structure that content in a meaningful way. And those are things like developing the user profiles in terms of security and provisioning our district users who will be content creators at some point. It's also about building out the intranet and allowing users access to content through authentication. And we are also going to integrate our staff directory on the district side with the staff directory that will be available to users on the front side. And of course, the ever important end user training plan, which is not only for district content creators, but there'll be a need to educate our public users as consumers of the site as well. And we are fully intending on a early first week of September go live date for the site. And there are some really important milestones that we'll be looking at in August that will be our go, no-go. kind of a barometer. And so hopefully they're a little more clearly illuminated here on this slide, but we're going to hopefully have in place the beta environment on August 1st, and what that'll be is a staged environment of the district site, accessible to users who have been provisioned to sign into that site. There'll be built-in feedback loops inside of that, meaning they can provide information about the page they're on and in other modules relative to that experience. And that user experience, that beta user window will last approximately 3 weeks. And during that time, we'll be using that information to inform the continued development of the site. If things are on schedule, we'll be looking at that final QA assessment around August 26th. And that will really be the final check of all systems, including the mobile responsive. So this is a responsive system, meaning it renders properly on a tablet versus a cell phone versus a full browser. We'll be looking at all those usability and accessibility features that are critically important. And also that overall experience, again, for the user. Are things functioning the way we expect them to? Are we minimizing the click-throughs? Have we learned from that feedback so that we're positioning content in a way that's easily accessible for folks? If all of those things pass around August 30th, we'll do the final back-end configurations, meaning getting ready to queue up the transition from the current albanyschools.org domain name to its new stage. We'll also be working to do things like activate the Google elements that we have integrated, one being analytics, so we can learn from the user's experience on that site as we go forward, and also for our translation engine within the system. And then September 3rd, we are looking to launch the new albanyschools.org trunk, as well as the corresponding shells of the school sites. And so that is a brief update of the current plan and status of the web implementation.
Board colleagues, one question at a time. Dr. Chatur?
What's the platform? Is it like Drupal based or WordPress, or because a website is only as good as how well it's updated, right? So is it user friendly?
Yep. So this vendor, it's a proprietary CMS, and you mentioned some of the popular open source. We looked at Drupal, we looked at WordPress, we looked at DNN, which is what we got. Campus Suite is the proprietary product for I always forget the company's name, parent company. But their Campus Suite is the actual proprietary product. And I think I put in my document where we recommended this vendor that they have extensive experience in the space, particularly in K-12 education. They're truly a market leader, and their reputation is outstanding, and they're constantly improving that product. So, I mean, we have a very stable, well-established, mature CMS product.
My only question is, excuse me, unlike the school tool, no roadmap at the end. Have you thought beyond September, or we're just sort of driving to September at this point?
We've thought beyond September. We have only planned the trip to there informally, I should say. And I will defer to Mr. Lesko here to my side, but you know, if you're thinking, are you thinking about the tier 2 kinds of things?
I'm just wondering what is in the tier 2 list as opposed to in the tier 97 list, because there's always many tiers.
So from my seat, it would be rolling in some of the communicative pieces that are part of this suite as well, which aren't really on the initial implementation. And I'll keep going back to this trunk edge, this core edge philosophy. We're focusing on albanyschools.org in its entirety, and the corresponding shells of each district school having its look and feel, and the sharing and standardization of content within that ecosystem. And then the second layer would be more of the two-way communication tools that do exist as modules and within this product.
And I think another important part of what we'll be doing once we get into the school year is when we begin the school year, we'll manage the content on the website the same way we do currently, centrally out of the communications office. As we grow over time, will also engage in training for our staff to begin to develop content managers in the building, specifically identified content managers, but so everybody won't have access to the website, but we're working with them to train them on how to use the tools to edit the areas that they, they'll have permissions to access the pages that they are allowed to edit, and we'll be working to develop those kind of content managers at the building and department levels to assist us with that workflow. The workflow process that's built in will still give us the final editing and rights before it goes live. But to begin to get more hands on deck when it comes to developing content for the website will be one of our priorities when we get into the new school year, and beginning to work with teachers and staff to develop their own pages within the albanyschools.org trunk. Those will not be part of the website as we roll it out.
Ms. Lang.
The web presence transition, the 80 means 80% is done, I'm assuming, and that is for the gather input for community holders, correct? What were some of the most important reasons people go to the Albany website that the stakeholders said that they really wanted to see? Is it information? Is it calendar? Is it programs? Is it teacher names? What is it that 80% of the stakeholders, really wanted to see in the website?
So I can't, the current survey closes tomorrow, and I know there's about 250 respondents. I've not looked at the responses. Jake has been tracking that. I do recall when we did it last year, we got a similar number of responses, maybe even more than we've gotten currently. One of the key elements that we heard consistently was we have good information on our website. It's just very poorly organized. I have a difficult time finding what I need. Ultimately, they can find what they need because it's there. One of the great benefits of this website is simply going to be the organizational structure that Campus Suite is going to bring to us, and it will be a much more user-friendly website, much easier for people to access the content that we have. And again, that was a pleasant surprise from the work that we did a year ago or 15 months ago, finding out that folks are finding generally what they need on our website once they can find it.
In terms of the two vendors that we talked about, or the two tools that we talked about tonight, School Tool and this new Campus Suite, do those two vendors have a relationship? Because you could see how some of the information might want to cross over in terms of, I want to be able to log in, and then I want to be able to see my students' teachers' website without having to separately go and find it on the website.
So there isn't a native relationship. However, they both support Clever, which is a federated integration service, which we are using currently with School Tool, and I touched upon it lightly in that piece, but that allows us to basically export every student roster, every class roster by teacher, and we feed it to all of these different curricular and other systems, and it would be the same scenario potentially with Campus Suite.
Because I think that part of what happens with our website and actually everything about the school district is that it's just too much. It's just too much. And so if you're a pre-K, you're an entering pre-K family, and you get to our website, and it's wonderful that the Marching Falcons are going to Normandy, but I really need to know if I can get aftercare, and how do I do that? So somehow personalizing the incoming eyeballs to what they're actually looking for, I think will make a difference as we can get to that level of customization. Anyone else have questions? And did you have something you wanted to add? You look thoughtful.
I'm just thinking, that made me think of a conversation I had with Dr. Wilson Turner earlier this week about starting to aggregate information for our new families in a way that's folks who are looking at the district for the first time in a way that's easy to find. Think of them as a user group as we're designing the architecture.
Yeah, and they're also a fairly anxious set of people. I mean, they have a lot of anxiety because this is their baby and they're trying to enter a new system, and it's an overwhelming amount. So anything we can do, look at her, she's nodding over there. Yes, they are. Anything we can do to make it feel less overwhelming for those entering families will go a long way to making them feel welcomed in our district, which they very much are. So any other questions for the gentleman? Ms. Lang?
I just want to say yay and thank you and everything. So I know that this has been a long, long process, but it's such a needed process, and I just think it goes with the communication that we've been doing and the video we've been doing, and just kind of the entire culmination of what we want to see, the streamlining of our message, and this is just another integral part of that. So thank you.
One more.
Oh, Dr.
Quick.
Chatoor.
So I was just looking at Campus Suite, and yeah, it's got a lot of capabilities. One of them seems to be the messaging part. So if we do use this, are we going to move away from SNN towards messaging through Campus Suite?
Want to take it? Yes, over time. Exactly what that time frame is, we haven't decided. We haven't developed yet. One of the challenges with that we have talked about a number of times over the past year is it's simple to migrate our families who are signed up for SNN to School Messenger. It's the folks who are not our families. So trying to probably that's just going to be a communication project over time, letting folks know that we will be transitioning at the date we choose in the future, and we'll just keep reminding them that on, July 1st, 2021, SNN will be gone, and all of the communication that we will
Exactly my question, because we've been doing a lot of community engagement and getting people signed on, elected officials, what have you, and trying to migrate them all to this new platform.
Right.
Could part of the rollover and getting people to switch over to the new platform be part of SNN? Like, click this link to register with said new product or things?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
But that's a tier 2. Let's talk about that in a year kind of thing, not a thing we need to be worried about right now. All right, I wasn't going to ask this, but now that we're continuing to ask questions, the robocalls that come for attendance, where do they fit into this? Because I will say there's a fair amount of humor around the robocalls that come for attendance that is, amuses people on that. So I'm wondering which tool they fit in, and are they somewhere on a roadmap to make that process different?
So the robocalls are a partnership. We provide the data exchange so that, as I mentioned before, we feed all of the information into the system, including the attendance records, obviously. And we also support Ron's office in understanding how to, and buildings actually are used, to understand how to use the system. We don't necessarily, we don't at all supervise or oversee or determine when calls are made. So I'm going to slightly do a bit of a punt, but those are the things I was alluding to on my roadmap as the tier 2, like these communication pieces. And to further cloud this, I guess, the current system that we do have that's doing the robocalling is itself a very comprehensive system, which could replace SNN as well. And so we do have to make a determination about which direction to go, and that's why it's a tier 2 task. Obviously, you try to be unified as much as possible, and if it works from a technical standpoint and Ron's team is comfortable with it, then I think it would make sense to move the entirety of mass communication into Campus Suite. But I'm not stating that for the record, really, at this point.
Yeah, I think the robocalls that people laugh about, and I never had a high school student, so I don't know, is my student was at a field trip and I got the robocall saying they missed period 8, 7, 6, and period 11, which doesn't exist. These kind of things just, people, I don't find a lot of annoyance about it. It's more humorous to people.
That's good feedback. Actually, honestly, if we'd gotten that sooner, we can tag these certain types of, this is where the communication is important between not only us, but the buildings too. Like what should be characterized as an absence. And we can weed that code out of what's part of the call. So that's good to know. I didn't realize vacation or field trips
And I
were
don't know
being-
how, again, I've never had a student, it's just an anecdote, but it is something I hear people laughing
I thought
about.
we got better
All
at
right,
that.
now we're really talking here. Ms. Wilson, then Ms. Lang, and then maybe we'll adjourn.
I don't have many questions because I'm really waiting to be surprised, and pleasantly surprised, I should say, because I can tell that you've made progress along the way and want to see what comes out of it. One thing I'm curious about, though, and I think I mentioned this to to Mr. Lesko in another capacity was, and I think it just came to my mind when talking about communication, or people not communicating or not being aware of something, or after the fact saying they didn't know. Our ability to sort of externalize things, sort of share this out, like whether I could push it to someone else if I see it on the website, Parent University coming up on Thursday, I could just share this to other people. So is that something that's going to be a facet of the new design that's coming out?
I know there is an alert system as part of that, meaning that it's almost like what I alluded to with School Tool. We can force users to at least acknowledge something. I honestly can't speak to whether or not the user can choose to share that item. I know they can with calendar things. I don't know about the alerts. That's a really good question, which I don't have the answer for.
Certainly the social media tools we use and will continue to use and expand the use of through the website will be ways that people can continue to share the information. But I don't know the answer to that specifically as it relates to Campus Suites technology.
Was there someone else? Jen, did you have something? She says she's okay. Anyone else? I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Smith. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.